Ladies and gentlemen, Honorary Ministry of Education, dear participants of the Conference on Teaching Profession. Mikkel put a lot of pressures on my shoulders for this presentation, but I tried to open few aspects of what was promised. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to share some important aspects of importance of the teaching profession. So I come from the University of Eastern Finland, and the name tells all the geographical coordinates coming from Finland and from the eastern part of Finland. It is a multidisciplinary university with 15,000 students and one of the 14 multidisciplinary universities in Finland in general. All teachers in Finland are educated at the research-based universities. I mean all, from kindergarten to primary to secondary to tertiary education. And from that viewpoint, I am going to talk about the importance of teaching profession. I have been a teacher educator about 30 years in 2 universities, and I have done research on teachers' pedagogical thinking, the use of ICT in classrooms, pedagogical ethics, and the assessment of teachers' work. And I think that these might be the reasons why I'm here today. Conference organizers have given me the topic, and I have taken the freedom to choose the content and the perspective, and I do definitely know nothing about the latest TALIS results, which will be presented to you later. So, to start with some changes at schools, this kind of lists may be numerous, but I have chosen some of the most prominent changes which have challenged also teachers' traditional roles. You see here 3 columns: educational aspects, concepts in 20th century, and concepts in 21st century. I'm not going to go into details, and this kind of tables may be a little bit black and white, but they may open some perspectives to teachers' profession. Looking at first the objectives, we have moved from general knowledge and general objectives to more specific objectives of education. As far as activities are concerned, teachers previously have emphasized pupils' ability to know, borrowing ideas, or based on content-based activities. Nowadays, they are challenged to promote ability to do, creating ideas, and arrange needs-based activities at school level. From past knowledge, we have come to the knowledge to provide our pupils with the kind of knowledge which helps them to cope with the future challenges. From acquisition of information to the acquisition of knowledge, which is meaningful information for different pupils. From collective or generalized curriculum to individualized and selective curriculum. We have also changed our views of the learner. So we previously aimed at what learned can understand easily, but today teachers have to emphasize what learners must know to meet modern world demands. Also, learning methodologies have changed. We have relied on traditional methods and will continue also relying on traditional methods. They are good at such to be used in the middle of other technologies as well. Pupils are asked to listen and to talk, and teaching and learning has been quite teacher-directed. Nowadays, combination of modern and new methods of teaching and learning, understanding, and self-directed learning is emphasized. From teacher-dependent pupils, we want to develop self-reliance in our children. Assessment of learning is nowadays more preferred to be assessment for learning or as learning in order to develop pupils' qualifications. From this kind of table, we can see that teachers and teaching are always important, but their role and responsibilities are now qualitatively different from earlier school times. Content expert in the classroom is today more, let's say, relations expert in open learning environments. Teacher is not only an instructor, but also an organizer and mediator in the learning networks. It is self-evident that this job requires special skills and good education. It's not possible that anyone from the street can step into the school and start to teach. Although a lot have changed, there are some aspects which hasn't changed over time. Teachers and pupils meet each other at school in order to learn. Especially pupils should learn, but also teachers can learn and pupils can teach. Another aspect is that education and teaching are at the heart of those encounters. And teachers are at schools those adults who are more responsible for main activities than at school than pupils. So here is the core of ethics in teaching profession, and ethical qualifications become more important constantly in teaching profession in this postmodern world. I'll continue of this topic. I have called the next section of my presentation, Being a Teacher Means Being Responsible, concerning education and teaching in relation to responsibility. I will first remind us all of some basic definitions. What does it mean to educate students, children, and youth? So education means creating prerequisites to ensure versatile growth and development, not only cognitive, not only social, not only physical, but versatile. It aims to develop an autonomous, inner-directed human being, which means that we as educators have to make ourselves to be unnecessary in a long run. Education takes time because growth is slow and multi-leveled. And I would say that teachers' task may today to be slowed down with the pupils, not to rush, but to take the necessary time to learn, to understand, to feel safe. And education, whether we not want or not, is characterized by an asymmetric pedagogical relationship between the educator and the educatee. This means adults' heavier responsibility, as I noted a few minutes ago. So education means to take responsibility, educational responsibility. This makes teaching as important activity. This reminds us of a teacher's important job to be in service of children and their beneficence. Educating children and youth and teaching pupils. There are dozens of definitions what teaching means, but I have taken a few aspects to remind that it is an action concept, as learning is a process concept and education is an action concept. There is some subject who teaches or educates. And it has dual meaning. First, teaching means to teach, but also it means to be taught, so to say, to learn. It cannot literally talk about teaching if learning has not happened. A good teacher, a qualified pedagogical professional, takes care of learning as well. She or he is interested what happens to pupils and in pupils while teaching. So teaching is an activity that is pedagogically intentional, planned and conscious, organized, institutional and professional. These four belongs to teachers' basic abilities. This list of basics underlines again that teaching is not a layman's job, as administrators sometimes tend to think when they want to hire cheap teachers by saying that everybody has been at school for years, everybody knows how to teach, and that's not the case. I have tried to conceptualize teaching triangle by this illustration when teaching requires a teacher, a learner, and content. And between a teacher and learner, there is a pedagogical relationship, which is in very important way on teachers' responsibility. But there is another relationship as well between the content and the learner, which I have called didactic relationship. So learner has always something to do, for example, with maths or biology, music, expressive arts, whatever the name of the subject at school level is. This is not enough, these two relationships. I have drawn, first of saying that teachers have to monitor and facilitate this relationship between content and the learner, so-called didactic relationship. But this is not enough. I have drawn the green line which combines these three all together, and I have called it educational responsibility. It's not enough to take care of learners as such or content as such, but the whole package is on the responsibility of teachers. I continue with a few slides which I have named teachers as responsible actors. And I look at a little bit more detail those four relationships to emphasize the importance of teaching profession. First, teachers' special expertise in a way is in creating and maintaining this didactic relationship. So parents, counselors, hobby coaches, friends or pop idols cannot do the same. So it means that professional education and expertise are required to manage so-called pedagogical content knowledge, as many researchers have conceptualized this core of teaching activity. Regarding didactic relationship, teachers need both initial teacher education and in-service teacher education concerning, for example, curriculum development, teaching learning methods including ICT, open, enabling and varied learning environments, and strength-based pupil assessment instead of traditional control-based assessment. For example, these elements are present in Finnish teacher education as well in many other countries to give the teachers abilities to manage this didactic relationship between the content and the learner. Second was pedagogical relationship, and here I want to emphasize that teachers are important adults for pupils in establishing this. It is not just any kind of a relationship, but one which is based especially on learning. And of course, it requires also professional education and expertise. Regarding this pedagogical relationship, teachers need education, for example, in developmental psychology, or especially supporting pupils with special needs and other kinds of diversity, for example, thinking about the multiculturalism at school level. And teachers cannot avoid educational relationship, whether they sometimes would have liked to skip it. We talk nowadays quite a lot of educational partnership, which involves shared educational responsibility by schools and homes. Teachers quite often say that it's okay with the pupils and children, they are nice and interesting and they are motivated to learn, but how to cope with the adults, how to cope with the parents who are nowadays quite demanding, how to cope with the adult relationship. This thing of taking care of educational relationship is in Immanuel Kant's old slogan of that the human being can only become human through education. So teachers are role models and they have to be trustworthy adults because they may be the only persons in pupils' lives who really care for them when the parents cannot bear their educational responsibility for a reason or another. Regarding educational relationship, for example, in initial teacher education, we need to discuss of the philosophy of education, the concept of a human being, to let the qualified new teachers to become aware of their worldview, values, legitimacy, and responsibility. And they have to consolidate trustworthy, asymmetric relationship, maintain open reciprocal interaction. Next section in my presentation continues the topic under the title Teachers in the Key Positions. I want to shed some light over teachers' roles in postmodern society, in which way they are in the key position. By this slide, I illustrate 5 important changed fields of teaching profession, changing environments of teaching profession. What kinds of postmodern circumstances embrace our teachers? I will start with a changing world, which is not news for anybody here in the hall. But to understand that, for example, understanding of knowledge and teachers' work in relation to knowledge has changed. Requirements in the social agency are more demanding nowadays, and we are, if possible, more unsure what is the future of our children and youth. Second concerns different homes and different families. So teachers work in partnership with different homes who live in between huge challenges and, for example, in relation to economy and work life. And our pupils bring the problems of their homes and their parents into school, and teachers try to cope with them. Third aspect concerns different pupils, varying motives and interests, diversifying abilities of children. And teachers should help them to find meaningfulness of school in the middle of tens of other agencies which try to capture pupils' time and interests. Fourth aspect is named diversity of school communities. Teachers' autonomy, the tradition of working alone have changed. They are asked to cooperate and collaborate with all kinds of partners. Diversity of school communities is increasingly all the time. And last and not the least is multiculturalism. One and many schools, habits, norms, worldviews, racist threats, and tolerance of differences. School staff seem to be multicultural, pupils are more multicultural, which asks for tolerance of differences more than ever before. If we try to look at the core competencies in relation to these changed environments, we can pick up at least these 2. First of all, teachers must scaffold learning of pupils. That's the core task. And for that, secondly, they try to develop operational environments as good as possible. And this means for teachers, these two core competencies, that they should be nourished continuously by continuous learning. And they have to do it in cooperation and interaction, as was mentioned earlier. This slide tries to sketch the know-how of the future. So I have named this From Core Competencies to Future Know-how, to pick up few competencies coming from these two core ideas and the surrounding things. In order to scaffold learning better or well, teachers need know-how in terms of theory of learning, students, and methods. To develop the operational environments, they need know-how in terms of context and subjects and content, of course, the traditional things. Fourth, in order to cooperate and interact, teachers need know-how in cooperation and interaction. And in relation to continuous learning, they need know-how in terms of deliberations, to think about your course and values, and information processing. And to put these two figures together, so look at the competencies and changing environments together. I want to pick up only few examples what is expected from teachers. First example comes here. If we think about the diversity of school communities and different families and homes, at least interactive core competencies are needed from teachers. Second example, if we think about different pupils and taking care of their learning and education, know-how, of course, of students, for example, in the development of psychology is needed. Thinking about changing world and changing understanding of knowledge and knowing based on educational or learning psychology, of course, teachers have to be qualified in information processing themselves and give also tools for their pupils to cope with huge amount of information. And the final example, to cope with the whole thing, it means that teachers need to know a lot of contexts. To try to make some summary of the importance of teaching profession, I would say, as is stated on the wall. So, teacher's role has changed over time. For example, these four aspects which I just presented: teaching community, work life, family life, pupils, and cultural diversity. And it means that new core competencies have become crucial. High quality teacher education is needed not only to meet those challenges, but also to be critical. Teachers need tools and concepts to also fight critically against undesirable external pressures in order to protect the pupils, the main task and core competencies, which means scaffolding of learning. And of course, ambitious task to protect teachers' prestige is present and ahead in many countries, because surveys tell about, and practice as well, that the standardization of teaching, low status of teachers, and loss of discipline is reality. And this topic of prestige will be the topic of my presentation during the last few minutes. And I have entitled this part, "The Teacher Does Matter." Improving the prestige of a teacher, I think that there is no quick, easy or cheap solutions, because values and structures are deeply rooted in the society. So in every country we have to ask whether education is broadly appreciated and supported in our countries. And I think that not much can truly be achieved in the global sense by image campaigns, better salaries, although the salary question is really crucial in many countries to motivate teachers. Not much can truly be achieved by control-oriented evaluation, standardized testing of pupils, increasing school size. Although in Finland many things have been very well, and we have seen also these things, popular vocabulary of new public management, we have taken our own line so that we haven't gone to this direction. Because in the spirit of rude accountability, it cannot be solved the problem of improving the prestige of a teacher. First thing which I want to highlight here is high level of initial teacher education. I don't mean that training of separate skills or increasing number of this and that kind of courses would be the solution, but systematic development of pedagogical thinking, by which I mean critical, systematic ability to be aware of the grounds and values of one's own teaching. Of course, the student teachers in initial teacher education must be challenged from the very beginning to experiment with different ways of doing pedagogical work, using modern tools, and in non-traditional learning environments. And these things, for example, we have done in Finland for 30 years, because since 1979, all the teachers in Finland have been educated in research-based universities, so they all take Master of Education degree or Master of Philosophy degree. And it takes 5 years of studies at the research-based universities. One exception here is that kindergarten teachers take bachelor degree, but they are educated as well at the universities. I would like to see that there is good, regular and versatile in-service education for all teachers, not just for principals, senior advisors or coordinators. Not only short courses, but longer programs, so-called professional development diplomas. I would appreciate more school-based, case-oriented initiatives, as we have done in Finland. Not only this school-based curriculum which was mentioned in the first talk. Instead of mass lectures and centralized programs which cannot meet fully or can meet only partly the needs of teachers, varied needs of teachers. And for example, locally oriented action research projects would be very much preferable in the spirit of teacher as researcher approach, which in no ways is a new approach. For example, Lawrence Steenhuis has said already in 1976 in his book that curriculum development means mainly the social change. Of course, work-related psychosocial improvements are needed, facilitating teachers' positive self-esteem and supporting expertise via strength-based feedback. Pupils do not like controlling. We as adults are appreciating strength-based feedback. That's not the exception in teaching profession. Allowing peace and time for basic work with pupils, because teachers all around the world complain about too many ongoing projects, which takes time from their basic work to help students to learn. We should take all around also in Finland more care of the novice teachers and aging teachers, for example, giving them the access to mentoring, or on the other hand, lightening the teaching load for aging teachers. I might be optimistic, but I want to say also the last thing on this slide, that lightening the workload in a way or another would be necessary. Maybe smaller schools, maybe reasonable class sizes, maybe sometimes teaching assistants to help the teachers to work with the heterogeneous pupils. I am not a person who relies on accountability-oriented evaluative practices, which are nowadays increasing all around OECD countries. So teaching standards, teacher appraisals, school rankings do not promote deep improvements in pedagogy or teaching work in general. They perpetuate mediocrity, rigidity, and unhappiness according to research results. Centralized curriculums do not indicate trust in teachers' professional skills. So school-based or local curriculums, as we have in Finland, of course, in the frame of national guidelines, strengthen experiences of teachers' agency. And also pedagogical leadership instead of management in the spirit of shared knowledge is needed. And of course, we have the right to expect something from the public as well, to be more supportive or less demanding. And I mean, for example, parents and citizens, media, educational politicians, school administrators, teacher unions, and so on, to be more supportive and less demanding. Because teachers and schools are instrumental in defining our future and creating coherence and stability in society. Education is an important form of life assurance in global perspective, especially for girls. Thank you for your attention.